My private jet made an emergency landing, but the real crisis arrived weeks later. The quietest disaster. People think catastrophe arrives loudly. Alarms, smoke, chaos. Mine arrived wearing a calm voice. At 41,000 feet, flying from Zurich to Los Angeles, the pilot leaned slightly toward the intercom and said, "We're making a precautionary landing. Not emergency. Not danger. Precautionary." That word followed me for months like a ghost I couldn't shake. My CFO's champagne spilled across white leather. Oxygen masks fell so fast people panicked before their brains caught up. But the pilot, steady, focused, almost rehearsed. We landed in Barstow, California, a place I'd never approved in any contingency file. Fire crews waited. Media vans were already outside the fence. Everyone told me I was lucky. My wife hugged too hard. My brother never called. And for the first time in 20 years of building systems meant to survive failure, I realized this hadn't been failure at all. A landing I never approved. Barstow isn't a destination. It's a punctuation mark in the desert, a strip of asphalt surrounded by dust and forgotten promises. We rolled to a stop under flashing lights. Fire trucks, sheriff vehicles, airport staff moving too quickly like this was practice. Reporters already clustered beyond the fence. Someone had tipped them off. The headline appeared online before my blood pressure stabilized. Billionaire jet makes emergency landing, no injuries. I kept hearing the pilot's tone, neutral, surgical. I'd trusted that voice with my life. My wife kept saying, "These things just happen." My brother said nothing at all. While paramedics pretended to check me, the fire chief slid a small envelope into my jacket. No explanation, just a nod. That night in the hotel, I stared at that envelope for an hour before opening it. Sometimes survival feels heavier than dying. The envelope. Inside the envelope wasn't a note or a warning. It was data. A printed diagnostic of an automated distress signal my aircraft had transmitted after we landed. A type of signal that only exists when a system has been manually overridden. Not malfunction, override. That word landed harder than turbulence. 2 weeks later, the maintenance report arrived. Pages missing, serial numbers mismatched, inspection cycles verified by a technician who'd retired 3 years earlier. I called my brother, voicemail. I called my wife's attorney. He informed me that the jet was no longer legally mine. A trust restructuring I'd apparently approved while recovering from shock. Shock. I was perfectly conscious when we landed. And suddenly, everyone around me was treating my life like an administrative error. That's when I realized the landing wasn't the incident. It was the opening move. Patterns only appear after the fall. Grief blurs edges. It took days for clarity to return. The hangar staff avoided eye contact. The insurer stalled. The maintenance firm sent summaries instead of logs. When I demanded raw data, I received a sanitized PDF stripped of metadata. So I hired someone who no longer needed anyone's approval, a retired FAA auditor who'd spent 40 years reading disasters backward. 3 hours after syncing his equipment with the jet's black box backup, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This wasn't failure. Someone nudged the aircraft. Not enough to destroy us, just enough to force a descent." Then he pointed to the coordinates. Barstow wasn't the closest runway. It was chosen. The room felt smaller after that. Because when systems don't break, someone is usually holding the lever. The hidden mirror. 3 years earlier, after my father died, I quietly embedded a telemetry mirror into our aviation systems. An off-network recorder that tracked manual overrides, input delays, command injections. Invisible, legal, forgotten. Everyone forgot about it. Everyone except me. When the mirror synced, the story became unavoidable. Manual stabilization overrides at cruising altitude, injected through a shell server registered to a holding company owned by a trust my brother controlled. This wasn't sabotage. It was choreography. They didn't want destruction. They wanted narrative, press coverage, asset seizure, legal leverage while I was in recovery. I stared at the logs and felt something unexpected: gratitude. Not for survival, for proof. Because proof is the only currency that outlives betrayal. The room where everything collapsed. Insurance arbitration hearings are designed to feel small: glass tables, low ceilings, polite cruelty. My brother sat 3 seats away, staring at the floor. They played the flight recording, spoke about fatigue, disorientation, mechanical unpredictability. Then my attorney stood. May we present auxiliary telemetry? The room shifted. The screen lit up not graphs, but commands. Time-stamped override injections routed through shell companies. My brother finally looked up. No voices were heard on the recording. Just silence swallowing careers. Then the hangar footage appeared, Barstow, minutes after landing. My brother walking onto the tarmac while fire crews still had the doors open. He hugged me that day. Some endings don't explode. They implode, losing everything without headlines. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. Trust boards are surgical when confronted with betrayal carrying criminal exposure. My brother lost control of every asset he touched. No press conference. No spectacle. Just silence. The same silence that had nearly ended me. For months afterward, I flew commercial, middle seat. No champagne, no entourage. Just gravity. I wanted to feel normal fragility again, the kind no system can insure against. Sometimes punishment isn't removal. It's revelation. Because when people lose power quietly, the story doesn't belong to them anymore. What near loss really teaches. People kept telling me I was lucky. They didn't understand the weight of that word. Luck implies randomness. This wasn't random. This was designed by people I loved, through systems I trusted, using authority I had handed over without imagining its edge. Near loss doesn't teach gratitude. It teaches clarity. I rebuilt slowly, different governance, smaller circles, less control ceded to blood and more to verification. Because the most dangerous failures don't come from enemies. They come from familiarity, from comfort, from assuming love makes people safe. The myth of safety. We design redundancy because we fear accidents. But we ignore intention. I'd spent 2 decades protecting against breakdowns, outages, human error. What I hadn't protected against was choreography. Against someone using my own architecture to reshape my life, while I trusted their closeness more than my systems. The jet didn't fail. It complied. That's the part that still wakes me some nights. Because when machines obey quietly, the real danger isn't technology. It's proximity. The life it gave back. People still ask about the landing. I tell them it saved my life. They assume I mean the jet. I don't. It stripped away illusions I didn't know I was protecting, about loyalty, power, safety, family. I no longer build systems for failure. I build them for truth. Because the lesson wasn't that I almost lost everything. It's that I almost never knew I had. The quietest moral. Near loss doesn't roar. It whispers. It dresses itself as bad luck, coincidence, paperwork, precaution. The moral isn't about betrayal. It's about attention. About how the most dangerous moments in life rarely look dangerous at all. They look administrative, polite, reasonable. And that's why they succeed. I survived a descent engineered by people I trusted. But the real survival came later, when I learned that safety isn't built through systems alone. It's built through awareness. Because when the world tells you these things just happen, that's the exact moment to start asking who benefits from them happening at all.